I just pick it.
It's all good, I think. Okay. Can you hear me now? Just to do a quick sound check. Hopefully you can. Brilliant. That's great. Marvellous. So that's our first technical difficulty over and done with. Hopefully we won't have too many more, but you can expect a couple. It's the nature of the beast, as they say. But as I said before, when nobody could hear me, welcome. Welcome to the School Education Gateway webinar, Developing Entrepreneurial Skills and Mindset Through Education. And this webinar is about assessing entrepreneurial education, a subject very close to my heart. I'm Elin, McCallum. I work in entrepreneurial learning, entrepreneurial education with my organisation, Bantani Education. And we're very passionate about promoting and developing entrepreneurial education, which is why we're very pleased to be part of this webinar, working with European Schoolnet. And this whole initiative is an initiative of the DG Education Culture within the European Commission. So it's great that they're putting this forward, and it's a real opportunity to explore the assessment of entrepreneurial education. These are the skills that we're talking about, and sometimes assessment can be lost in this because it's hard, it's difficult. These are hard to assess competences that we're discussing. I wanted to just go through a few bits of background to what we're talking about, just briefly before we welcome our speakers. And then I'll just briefly present our speakers and we can go straight into hearing from them. So firstly, entrepreneurship competence. This is one of the key competences for lifelong learning. In fact, it was initially agreed across all member states in Europe back in 2006. In the recommendation on key competences for lifelong learning, member states said, yes, we will introduce these as transversal competences into our education systems. And to a certain extent, they have. To a large extent, they have. And this has now been re-emphasized with the new recommendation, a revision of those key competences for lifelong learning. Entrepreneurship is in there. It is very present, and it has been further defined by using the introduction of the EntreComp framework. Now, this is something that we spoke about in the last webinar that we did on EntreComp with the author of EntreComp, Margherita Bacigalupo. It's a European framework for entrepreneurship, really breaking it down into what we mean. I know that a couple of our presenters will also mention this, and that's because it's becoming more important. It really is almost the basis of this revised entrepreneurship competence within the European key competence framework. And it looks at this broad capacity to act on opportunities and ideas to create value for others, social, cultural, or financial value. And this is important because when we look at this, we look at vision, curiosity, spotting opportunities, self-efficacy, managing and understanding risk and ambiguity. These are things which, as I said, are hard to assess. But yet, within education, within learning, sometimes what is not assessed is not valued. And that's why we put such an emphasis on this work in order to try and illustrate that these are skills, these are attributes that can be developed. Progress can be seen in the learner's capacity to use, implement, and apply these skills and attributes. And the two projects we have today really illustrate that. This slide you see here is about, it's so hard sometimes to understand. We ask about perhaps business planning, but that doesn't illustrate our creativity. We ask perhaps about what idea do you have, but that doesn't illustrate the sort of the vision you have, the challenges you've overcome with that. It doesn't illustrate the breadth of what we mean by that entrepreneurial competence, the 15 competences that within the EntreComp framework. And it shows when you do research across Europe. The Eurydice unit within the European Commission did research back in 2016, now it was launched, and they saw that no country, no education system in Europe had a really national or regional approach to the assessment of these competences. And that's something that, since that was published, has been acted on. And that is the result of that is the two projects that you're going to hear from today are certainly the result of these challenges that were seen and evidenced within the Eurydice study. There are no system-wide approaches, and yet we need those system-wide approaches. These skills, these competences are what employers are looking for. They're proven to be life skills, not just employment skills, not just skills for scaling a business, starting a business. These are life skills. These are broadly applicable to different areas to help young people achieve their potential. And in order to do that, we need to understand how to best assess them. And from that, how to best perhaps introduce skills-based qualifications and recognition within national education systems. So this is what we'll be talking about today. These guys that we're going to be talking to, they're at the front line of trying to work out, overcome, tackle these challenges of assessment, trying to put them into wording that is simple for the many, trying to explain practical ways that people can achieve this. So today we have two projects with us. I'm very pleased that the EntreAssess project, developing practical entrepreneurial assessment tools in Europe, the project itself is called PEAT, is here to launch the results of their 2-year project, which I express an interest I'm also involved in, from the work they've been doing with experts on assessment across Europe. So we're very pleased to welcome Kathryn Penaluna. I'm having a moment. That's my second challenge. Kathryn Penaluna from the University of Wales Trinity St. David, and Iván Diego from Valnalón in northern Spain. And secondly, we'll also be then welcoming Jaana Seikkula-Leino and Mirva Jalo from the Skilloon tool, who have also linked to the University of Tartu in Finland. But first, Kath, Iván, please share the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years, the results that we've come up with, and of course, then sort of this is the official launch of the EntreAssess.com project results. So thank you for joining, and I hand over to you.
Good. So, well, yeah, hello everyone. This is Iván. Thanks for joining us today. Myself, together with my colleague, we will just take you through the output of our work. And our intention here is just to highlight some of the thinking behind this 2-year project, to show you the outputs of our work. Above all, this is probably a starting point to have a deeper discussion on assessment.
Oh, Kathryn, you're muted now. Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, this is Kath here, speaking to you from Wales. Great to have an opportunity to speak to you today. Certainly, one of the aspects that has been highlighted with entrepreneurial education is that we hear so many inspirational stories. We're frequently hearing from teachers who are introducing entrepreneurial competencies into the classroom across all levels and across all topics. But the challenge echoed across the whole of Europe is, well, just how do we assess it? What are the learning outcomes and how do we assess them? So this is what we've been having a look at within this project. But also accompanied with that is, well, what exactly do we mean by entrepreneurial competencies? What are we really talking about here? So we've taken our competencies from the EntreComp framework. It's the EU framework for entrepreneurial competencies. And the competencies include, as we can see here, creativity, self-awareness, self-efficacy, initiative, opportunity orientation, being able to cope with uncertainty and managing it with yourself and with others as well. Perseverance, keeping on going. Essentially, we're talking about what would be considered life skills, aren't they? They're the skills, the competencies that all our learners are going to need so that they can add cultural, social, and economic value in the future. So we're looking at, well, how do we develop these competencies? So we look at value creation for others, as we said, the social, cultural aspects. Could be through venture creation, the mini companies. Looking at opportunity creation, identifying it. self-directed learning.
Yeah, so, well, before we
problem-based
disclose the
learning.
full details, we would like to show you a video that's going to be launched. It's a short video explaining like the key tenets of our approach. And after that, we will follow with the presentation.
We live in changing times.
We live in changing times. Automation,
teaching and learning for jobs that do not exist yet mean that entrepreneurial competencies such as self-awareness, spotting opportunities, creativity, working with others become more important. As educators, we know that assessment is changing too. How do you assess entrepreneurial competencies like creativity, like vision? In every staff room across Europe, these questions are popping up. What does this mean for you as teachers? Listening to teachers has been an eye-opening journey for the EntreAssess team. We are a group of educators and practitioners who are keen to meet these challenges. Over the course of our 2-year EU-funded project, Practical Entrepreneurial Assessment Tool for Europe, we've listened to and engaged with teachers from across Europe to find answers. Along the way, we have found so many inspirational practices, and we've tried to capture these in a progression model of assessment to help you. The progression model and resources now make up our EntreAssess journey. We work towards a world in which assessment informs what a learner should be learning next. A world where assessment focuses on progression and steers learning forward. A world where assessment is designed to have value for the learner. We envision a world where educators use those sophisticated assessment methods and tools to help them manage their learners' often complex entrepreneurial learning journey. The first step on this journey is exploring the 6 dimensions of the assessment readiness tool, a self-assessment tool to map yourself against these 6 dimensions. We now know that the 6 dimensions, what, how, when, where, who, and why, are what teachers always ask about entrepreneurial learning. They want to understand why it's important, how to do assessment, who should be doing the assessing, or what tool to use and when. Simply put, where do you think you are on a scale for each dimension? The next step is the progression model. You now know where you are, you're ready to take the next steps. You might be asking questions like, how do I know if my assessment is fair? How do I know if it's really mapping student progress? We can help you address these questions with this progression model. It captures the 6 dimensions across 3 levels, initiating, developing, and performing, and shows you your journey forward. At initiating level, assessment is often used to simply get through the curriculum. At developing level, assessment is more focused on improving student learning. Finally, at performing level, evidence is analysed to fine-tune teaching and assessment practices in a way to help both the learner and the teacher to recognise where the learner is in their learning, where they need to go, and how best to get there. This is about seeing your next steps to enhancing your use of assessment. The progression model can be used by individual teachers, groups of teachers, or across your whole school, by your leadership. It could spark discussions with your fellow teachers. Maybe you can even kickstart a whole new way of thinking about assessment in your school, creating a structured approach to make assessment really work for you and your learners. In our own journey of creating these tools, we found so many inspirational practices. For each level and dimension, we share a set of assessment methods, tools, and approaches. You can pick from the methods to get started. We've also made it easy for you to find practical tools that use these methods. For example, at a basic level, we're all used to using summative assessment to help us get through the curriculum, to give our students a mark or a grade. At a more advanced level, we use formative assessment to develop and inform our students' learning. Where we can get to is a more sophisticated level of assessment like ipsative assessment, something that really inspires our students to reach their personal best. Choosing 1 or 2 of these methods that suit you is a great way to get engaged. You can find tools that will help you implement these methods, and the website also provides real-life examples of how other teachers and schools are implementing entrepreneurial assessment. This is now your journey, empowered to use more and more sophisticated assessment methods and tools
that allow you to capture the finer details and nuances of your learner's entrepreneurial learning journey. This brings us to the implementation pathway. From simple to sophisticated, from a teacher working on their own to assess an individual student, to a community talking and working together. We imagine an entire school where innovative assessment is used in all classrooms, in all subjects. We imagine an entire school where teachers and students support each other through assessment. And we imagine a future where an entire school and its community come together to make assessment relevant and real, and to reflect the changing world around us. How do you get started? You start here. In a few clicks, the self-assessment tool on our website, EntreAssess.com, helps you to see where you are, where you can go, and what the future of assessment might look like. That do not.
Okay, so I guess we can continue with our presentation. As I said before, we're not planning to go through repeat the same things that have been like so brilliantly summarized in the video, but just focus on some key aspects of the model. The first one is like it's like when you enter a staff room, when you formulate a question around the assessment of entrepreneurship skills. You just realize how challenging this question is, and you will surely confront a standard range of perspectives. So here's the first question for you, right? So picture yourself in your school staff room. Just look at all these different bubbles with different colors, and just please find, look, what's your point of view? Do you see your position represented in any of the statements shown in this slide?
It'd be really interesting for us if you could highlight that and see what the consensus is. Whilst you're having a think about that as well, or are people filling that in? Oh. Lots of interesting thoughts coming through.
Yeah, you can cast your votes now. Can you see the slide though? Yeah, I see like some people is voting now, yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so assessing entrepreneur education skills. Yeah, if only I had time.
Yeah. So is the,
where
yeah,
should I
where
start?
should I start now? That really reflects the situation we've found in so many schools across Europe, right?
Oh, absolutely, Iván. And that's what we were finding, wasn't it? That aspect of, well, just
Yeah.
where do we start? And how?
Good. So then shall we just continue with the presentation? Because this just gives us a very interesting, okay.
Yeah? Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, thank you, Iván. Thank you. Yeah. So what we were finding is that a lot of people were going straight to the how. How do we do it? But in order to answer that, when we were actually speaking to a number of teachers, we had to start thinking about, well, when we assess as well, where we assess, who is responsible for the assessment. And I guess the really big question is actually why. Why are we doing this? Why are we looking to do this? Who does it benefit? And then the what, having a look at what we really are measuring when we look at this?
Yeah, exactly. So what we thought is this is one of the key aspects of the model, and then the other one is just this, we built into the model a sense of progression. So this, I'm not, all right, yeah. So I'll show you that we're assuming like teachers, schools, groups of teachers are at different stages in their implementation of entrepreneurial assessment. We know it's a challenge, so we've defined 3 different levels for the 6 dimensions outlined there. So basically we have another question here for you, and I know there's a lot of text in this slide, but could you just very, very quickly, where does your current assessment practice in your school fit in? Where do you see yourselves fitting in those 3 levels? You are in a sort of like a beginner's level, or you're like, you know, performing to the maximum standards in terms of like assessment? Okay, so I'm having problems here to close the poll. I don't know how to. Shall I just close it, or because I need to move? All right.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think I just closed it.
Great. So, that's exactly how we want like teachers to interact with this progression model. The first step will be like just taking stock of what's the actual situation. Say for in this example, we were working with a group of teachers, and they just said, well, there are 2 key aspects that we really want to look at. Right now, we're doing it in a very summative way, right at the very end of the course. It's largely based on teacher assessment, and we really want to take some steps towards a more like mature way of assessing things. So we will really like to focus on that thing, the formative aspect. We want to add a few control points and opportunities to review and relearn, and then we want to explore ways to include self-assessment, peer assessment into the this teacher assessment thing. So yeah, so that's the basically that would be the plan of the progression model. But now, right now, you can say, okay, I want to do something about this, but I'll need some inspiration. Where can we find this inspiration?
Okay. Also, one of the conversations that we had about that model was also having a look at whether some people haven't actually reached the initiating stage as well. So any thoughts on that would be really welcome as well, wasn't it, Iván? We were discussing whether we should have a level below initiating, if you like. So it would be interesting for us if you thought that as well. So thoughts on that, welcome. So what kind of tools do we have on the website that you might be having a look for? When you have a look on the website, you may well find some aspects, some tools, some methods that you might not be familiar with. So you might well be making some really good progress with the matrix itself, and then start thinking about other tools that you might be developing as well. So on here, on the site, we have some methods, some tools, and some examples. And here's one. This is having a look at learning progression as an actual method, having a look to see how you can have a look to see how your students and learners themselves are progressing, mapping them against something that you wish to map them against. So what about a tool then? What kind of tool could we have? we've got a tool then using the EntreComp framework that we've been discussing earlier. So that's one of the tools that's out there that can be used. And then we've got an example of someone who's actually used these particular models. In the particular case that we're showing here, this is a primary school here in Wales called Elin. And the primary school teachers in that school use the EntreComp framework to discuss with their pupils their own competencies, and the pupils actually self-assess themselves as well and have a look at their progression. So that's an example of it being used in progress. We've considered them, if you like, as triads, so putting those examples together.
Yeah, so all the tools, methods, and examples are available on the project website, and as you can see, we have this whole range of methods, tools, and examples, sort of like complement the progression model. In the end, like, this is the vision, right? And this is the vision we would like to share to you. Like, the full potential of the model won't be realized if the design of assessment is approached as an individual endeavor. So we're rather looking to a sort of like whole school assessment approach. And in this, if you look at the right side of the slide, you can see like that's the vision, that's the thing we're aiming for, which is basically a whole school approach where assessment of skills is widespread and integrated across the curriculum and school years, where a broad number of skills is assessed, where like there's a high level of teacher coordination, shared purpose, common tools, and clear sense of progression is built in. There's the active involvement and regular involvement of students and other actors in the assessment. So that sort of like encapsulates our vision. But this is a journey, and it won't happen from one day to the other. It takes time, and it's about like, you know, engaging with the model, having some discussions with your colleagues, and moving slowly but like surely towards that end goal.
Yeah, as Iván says, it's a journey, and it's an exciting journey to travel along. So it's thinking about the different stages, what you're actually looking to achieve, and where you sit on the progression model. But every school is in a different place, and arguably every educator's at a different place with entrepreneurial assessments. So again, we'd be very interested in your thoughts on this as well. So you see how this model and the supporting tools, the methods and examples could be used in your work. And I mean, let us know your comments. We've opened up a comment box, so please do share your thoughts, because we're well aware of the expertise. We can see from the names coming up and the different countries represented, we would really value your thoughts.
Yeah, and as we said, this is like as we said, this is all about like having a proper conversation about assessment. It's about, on the one hand, it's about reflection combined with a dialogue. And in that slide, you see like a group of teachers sitting around the table, having a conversation, sharing the tools they're using, sharing their perspectives, agreeing on goals, and as in the end, that will just be like starting point to start changing your assessment practice. So this is basically, this is the key aspect in our model.
And it's also having a look while you're thinking about it as well. What else could we be finding out to actually help you with your work? What's next, basically?
Hi, everyone. I think I'd like to say thank you so much to Kathryn and Iván for their presentation. I think the questions they've left on the screen there, at the moment the question up there is, do you see how this model could be used in your work? Please let them know, let us know. I'm also part of this project, and we're very keen to see the relevance of this, the challenges that this model offers, the opportunities that you see in your work, or perhaps the extra support that you might need to be able to work more with a model like this, to, as Kath and Iván have said, to actually progress from using, and perhaps you're already in the sort of the developing phase. You're already, looking at peer-to-peer assessment, or perhaps community assessment, stakeholder assessment from outsiders involved in learning. Maybe you want to move to more complex assessment, more the performing level. What would help you do that? So if you can let us know, that would be great. And if you have any ideas within that on what would come next, then I think Iván, Kath, and myself and other colleagues involved in this would be very grateful to hear.
Do we have time to show the final slide?
We have one more slide. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We do?
Can you? Yeah.
I'm minimizing this.
So
thank you, Iván.
Said, what will be next for us? Just please visit the website. You can share your journey using our Twitter account. And what's more important is we will really love to hear about your experiences. So if you can just give us your email address, put it in the chat box, we will get in touch. That's essentially like when you go to the website, there's a blog there with lots of practitioners, like interviews with practitioners. You can have a look at the way like people are already interacting with the tools and the materials. So yeah, thanks so much for attending, and we're really happy to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see also that multiple attendees are typing their emails into the chat box, so hopefully EntreAssess can pick up on those and get in touch and see if we can gain further insights from colleagues. I will now say thank you properly. Thank you. And do we have any questions? If we have any questions, we have a couple of minutes for questions, but we'll also have some time after the Skilloon presentation for questions to all of our presenters. So if you want to ask a couple of questions now, that would be great. And otherwise, we can wait with those and we can come back after the Skilloon presentation. Okay, we're getting a lot of email addresses coming through, which is fantastic. There's a lot of interest in this, I think. This is the highest number of participants we've had for one of our webinars, so I think that shows that this is really a very pertinent and present topic for many teachers who want to advance their, and organizations and education systems who would want to advance their practice and implementation of entrepreneurial assessment. If you have any questions, we'll take those at the end. But I think I'm going to say just thank you, Iván and Kath, and thank you to the other members of the EntreAssess team. This really it's a model of how assessment can progress and the tools and inspiration in order to help you do that. And hopefully that can provide the inspiration you need to take your practice forward. The next presentation is about Skilloon and will come from Jaana Seikkula-Leino, who is based in the University of Tartu, but very, very involved in a number of entrepreneurship education initiatives across Finland. And she very much is at the center of many developments. So what I would like to say is really welcome to Jaana and thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to hearing about Skilloon. And I'll hand over to
Thank you.
Jaana now.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, regards from Finland. Turku University, Mirva Jalo is also present here. So we both come from the University of Turku, although we cooperate with Estonia, Tallinn University of Technology. But nice to meet you all, and we are really happy to join this webinar since assessment, as discussed earlier, it's really important topic, and there is great progress now in European Union, and we are really happy to present one Finnish example. Firstly, about our project, it's Skilloon is a national project in Finland.
Could you please turn on your webcam? Because we cannot see you at the moment.
Okay. Sure. Yes. Okay. Thank you. So Skilloon is a national project in Finland. It's funded by the Finnish National Agency of Education and it's also part of our national strategy of education. Our ministry wanted to integrate it Skilloon to enhance entrepreneurship education development here, and this is a very practical point of view of developing entrepreneurship in education. I hope you hear all well. There were some connection errors from our side, I noticed when we listened to the previous presenters, but I hope you can hear me well. But we both are here and we continue with Skilloon. And Skilloon is, to mention shortly, today we just focus on assessment part, but what kind of tool is Skilloon? Even though it's a research-based model, a system, it's a very concrete, and I'm also happy to invite you to ask demo or access for the system, because it's very concrete based system, and maybe you can get some ideas and help for assessment development for entrepreneurship education. Skilloon involves very practical things besides assessment tools. So we even talk about empowering evaluation in terms of entrepreneurship education development, because this system guides teachers and students to do personal and group activities. And there is also space for personal reflection and learning, through which teachers can mentor students. So actually on the red and yellow part of this picture, they are the concrete parts of Skilloon. But in the green area, we have kind of captured the research ground of Skilloon. Actually, what you can see this also in practice in Skilloon, but there are 6 core competencies. It's the ground of entrepreneurial learning, and this is based on self-esteem and self-efficacy theories, integrating aspects of developing entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial behavior. So we have the point of views of business and economics research integrated into this 4. So, but this is like very briefly about how we based our Skilloon. So it's a research based, but it has practical elements. And today we especially focus on the yellow part. That's the assessment part. But to mention how we see Skilloon through EntreComp. Of course, EntreComp involves many components, but when we have studied our Skilloon and its contents, and so we can actually see all elements of EntreComp in Skilloon, which is really great, because we started to develop this system like 2015, and we didn't have EntreComp back then, but we realized that we are on the right track, and they are all those aspects that you can see in EntreComp. You can find them through system kind of in many areas, so it's not so simple maybe as it looks like, but we try to picture how EntreComp can be found through Skilloon. And especially the red part tells about the the practical part and the green area and is about visual. How do you? I can see that. Sorry, ideas and opportunities and resources are mentioned on the assessment part. But this is kind of how we picture currently, at least, how Skillhoon is seen through EntreComp. So actually, I move on quite forward to the practical part. So what actually students do in Skillhoon, they do school evaluations and they do also self-evaluations. So this is kind of starting point in using Skillhoon, and it's really nice that there also teachers can get statistics right away, and they can also follow the individual process of students through students' reflection area. We call that Skillhoon Logbook. So in fact, we have integrated into Skillhoon some gaming elements that you will see if you register in for Skillhoon to have a look for it. So the logbook means that students have a kind of journey that they earn rewarding meters with Skillhoon, and they have a journey, and they have their own logbook in the system to track their journey, to mention. But the starting point is assessment. So it's where we start, and students accomplish school evaluations. They are Likert scale questionnaire according 6 core components. So teachers get this result for themselves, for their use, and for the use of developing their school. Inline, students accomplish self-evaluations. So and they also get personal feedback, which are categorized. So actually, through research, we have also developed this system, how we categorize the answers, and they get personal feedback. The system gives the feedback for each student, and it gives ideas also that this is just an example of student feedback received. So it gives questions according the type of answer he's been giving, and it gives also recommendations to go further with the system. So it's actually self-guiding system, but inline, even though the system gives ideas for students, they can choose activities in the system, and this gives idea how to choose the activities. So if the answers are kind of poor, the system encourages students to take those part of activities more. But inline, teachers can also set up obligatory activities for students. So, for example, if the focus is on cooperation, teacher can set up activities according that model, and students can see those obligatory exercises in the system. But here you can see the idea about the feedback. There has been this interesting question actually that we found out that this is also maybe a question for you, because in some culture it's not proper that students assess their school. So it's like somewhere like in Middle East, this has been kind of they agree with the concept and idea, but the idea that in education students are kind of evaluators the level of education. That's not maybe culturally accessible. So this is the reason actually why develop this system so that you can activate and deactivate the assessment parts in Skilloon. But of course, in the situation that like your students have just started the class and they have no idea about the school yet, so it's also possible to deactivate the assessment part for a while and then turn it on after students know the school more. But just these are kind of technical elements that I show you, but it gives ideas also that we can put this assessment into practice and in very practical way. And of course I could explain about our grounds and so on more, but maybe I'm today more practice orientated. This gives also a picture that how we get data out from Skilloon. So through evaluations, you can see right away how things are moving according to 6 core areas. And you can also compare different groups in your school and so on. The system allows to do things like that. You can also follow group progress, how students are achieving, like through statistics and through quantitative data. So, but in line, you can also assess individual students' progress through Skilloon Logbook system, and you can also mentor each student. So actually, even in special education, this has been an attractive part of Skilloon because they can focus more on students' personal development and I mean through the system, through assessment, through activities, what they are doing. The system allows teachers to support students many ways. To mention that there is also, for teachers' development, we have also resource center for teachers that guides them for entrepreneurial skills, what they are, and even without Skilloon, how they could put entrepreneurial learning into practice. So this is kind of system that it doesn't only educate students, it's educating tool for teachers, because through assessments, through activities that are already made there, they can gain their understanding of what is entrepreneurial learning about and how they could put that into practice. Yes. So this is and not Mirva's name here, but she is our project coordinator, national project coordinator of Skilloon. Hello. Yes, and we are both here. So I hope you have heard everything, because we had this connection error during the previous presenters.
I think we have heard everybody. So thank you very much. Really appreciate that presentation and insight. I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah, Jaana, could you mute?
There we go. Thank you for that. So I think we've really had an insight into Skilloon as both a practical tool for student assessment and to initiate and guide student entrepreneurial assessment, but also I think I think also to allow that macro view of all of your students and to see, well, what is the evolving progression level? Let's compare and contrast with at a school level as well. So I think if I've understood right, that's the possibility with Skilloon as well, which is very interesting. I'm sure that we have some opportunity now for questions. And we've had a lot of engagement through the chat box, but perhaps, I don't know if you want to ask any questions first of the audience, Jaana. Would you like to?
Yes, I can hear Andy is typing, yeah.
Great. And would you like to ask any questions of the whole audience, Jaana? We have a couple of polls ready for you, but I don't know whether you want to launch. Great. And Would you like to ask any questions?
Sorry, Andy, would you please clarify a little bit your question?
So my question was, do you want to initiate any questions to the whole audience from a sort of, an online poll perspective? If you do, just let me know through the chat box. But perhaps the first question we can ask you is
oh, yes, sure, yes.
Okay,
yes,
so
yeah.
we have a couple of questions up and running for Skilloon, so perhaps you can say which one you would like. There we go. So we've got one coming up now for Skilloon. So I think this is really looking at, get some feedback on. Okay. Well, let's have a look at the first question from Andy. So the first question from Andy Penaluna, who's also from the University of Wales, Trinity St David, can past students feedback through Skilloon? Current students often have a view, but students who have already left the institution and education can have very useful insights. And I know the alumni feedback, past student feedback, can be a very powerful tool for educators. Would you be able to comment on that, whether Skilloon can facilitate that? There's a lot of feedback. Can you hear me okay, Jaana?
Well, the students have an account in Skilloon, which is it is active always, even though after they have left school. And we have several quality, these questionnaires that we send to all Skilloon users from time to time, and the graduated students can participate then. And then there is, of course, the Skilloon teacher material bank, where, for instance, one idea for teachers to do in their course is to take the ideas and advice from the graduating students and then collect them somehow in their school for an idea wall or something, that they leave their, ideas and how to work in school for the younger students. Did you mean this, Andy?
Okay, so I think that it's really...
Yes, actually, I would also encourage you...
Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Jaana, before we move on to the poll?
Thanks. Yeah. This is yeah, I think that it would be really nice for you people. There are so many people. We are really grateful that we have this opportunity to present Skilloon. And in European level, we really encourage you to ask for demo. So you can find the demo, ask for demo. You can find the button from Skilloon website, and you are able to explore more. Then you experience Skilloon. You understand the system better. So I would encourage you to do that. And you can even have, if we discuss, you can even have your school pilots, kind of not huge ones, but you can do some piloting with the system in your country. So we encourage for that. And there's also an option. We currently run this national project, and we are internationalizing the project, and and we have done some during this spring. There have been some pilots in Estonia, Brazil, in the Middle East. We also welcome some other pilots from other countries because we are at the stage now that we are internationalizing the system. There is very nice option for research development, joint projects, and of course we are really interested in your feedback and how you feel the system for your use. So we want to develop the system, of course, even further, even though we have kind of okay situation currently. Yes.
Thank you very much, Jaana, and thank you, Mirva. I think that's a very interesting example of really sort of a practical assessment tool. I think we've got, if we can mute all of these presenters so that I don't get any feedback, that's great, thank you. So, what I'd like to open up now is really, we've heard from a progression model and supporting inspiration from EntreAssess. We've heard from a practical tool that can help teachers and students to better assess their work, their learning, their progress, to support explicit assessment of entrepreneurial skills, and also the ability to see that at a macro level, at school level, at system level. Now, we've had a couple of questions through, one on the importance of alumni feedback. We've also had a question through from a statement through from Greece saying that, assessment is not an accepted word in the Greek education system. These are the challenges that are faced, and these are the reasons why, in that Eurydice study in 2016, we had no system-wide assessment process, assessment approach for entrepreneurial education, for these competences. This is the challenge we face, and this is the importance of introducing these tools, these projects that are trying to tackle this to as wide an audience as possible. Now, Nikki says, here in Greece, the word assessment is forbidden. I think this is something that, hopefully in the most recent key competence recommendation does talk about assessment and the need for innovative assessment to help teachers to see the progress of that learning, to personalize learning, and to also introduce these key competencies that are sometimes seen as hard to assess into their teaching and learning. I need to just open up the chat box to see the other questions. There's some big questions coming through. Margarita Bacigalupo has said, I think you can use assessment methods as educational activities. I think in response to Nikki's comment about the challenges of assessment, so they become learning activities and not assessment. What I mean is you don't have to translate peer assessment into grades, but you can use it for sustaining the working together competence, for example. Likewise, self-assessment can be a strategy for self-awareness. Some teachers use learning conversations with their individual students to understand the progress they're making, which is a very simple way to just get that connection. Other teachers might use student-to-student assessment, where the students try and sort of almost share where they are, share how they've learned, what they've learned in a certain activity, and share that with another student to compare and contrast, and also to balance their own interpretation of their own learning. And that can be an interesting tool. Ipsative assessment, some of these are illustrated on the EntreAssess website. Ipsative assessment, which is really about, how can we support the learner to do their best? Are they doing, are they reaching their potential in this area? How do they move forward from where they are now? Again, it's all about that emphasis on progress and progression, as well as then sort of the result of learning. So a real focus on summative assessment. Yes, in many cases, that's the core of, it, as Nikki says in Greece, practical, how they practice assessment, because they look at end-of-year exams, final exams. But formative assessment needs to play a much bigger role, an ever bigger role. And Margarita should add in the chat, Pete visions that assessment is not a gate on learning pathways that you have to open, but a lift that brings you a level up. Nikki, in Greece, they have actually, the ministry has translated the EntreComp framework into Greek, which was a complex process because of the wording. If you look at the EntreComp Into Action User Guide, which is the user guide to support people both to understand the EntreComp framework, but also to share, it shares ideas, examples about how it's been implemented. And Greece has started to implement that. So it might be something that you want to look at, and you can get in touch with the people who've led that work, who, both in the ministry but also at school level, in order to talk to them about some of the challenges you're facing. And of course, get in touch with any of the speakers here today as well. I'm sure that we'd all be happy to help. Any more questions that we'd like to come to? We've got, we usually go till about quarter to two, so another 15 minutes or so. But I realise this is a challenging area. It's not simple. It's not straightforward. But there are a lot of work that's trying to help both teachers, schools, and education systems to move this forward. And Nikki, we hope change is going to come too. This is what we're all working towards. Any more questions coming through before your pension? Yes. Within our lifetimes, we keep our fingers crossed. But change is happening. I know in Luxembourg has been part of the Youth Start project, so Youth Start Entrepreneurial Challenges project. And they've really sort of looked at how, this is the Luxembourg education system, how they've started to, they don't necessarily assess and value these entrepreneurial skills. And so what they're looking at doing is to see, well, is it possible to introduce skills-based qualifications, skills-based learning pathways for our learners in secondary schools, because we want to make sure this is emphasized. So alongside looking at continuing professional development, but teachers to help them introduce it, both, individually and at school level, but also to look at that system level change. If you want to look at Youth Start, I think it's youthstart.eu. That's a very interesting project. So we're not getting so many questions through. I wonder if any of our speakers want to highlight if you have any questions for each other. Please, who can I hear there speaking? Hi, Iván.
A few words about this whole school assessment approach and how important it is to have these conversations and just sit around the table, because otherwise, you stand up talking about what's the next tool. You just become like too obsessed with having like a huge, ridiculous number of rubrics around you, and that sort of like gives you like some sort of like self-reassurance in the way you assess. But that's not it. And one of the other key points I want you to stress is that this sort of like school perspective on the assessment of transversal competences is far from new, and it's not really like, probably it's not good for me to say that in terms of project-wise, but we came across some very interesting work being undertaken in Australia way back in 2005. Scotland, the Assessment for Learning Initiative, roughly around the same year, and basically some work in schools in the US around authentic learning, and basically that was the whole discussion, right? It's the discussion of having like this sort of shared language, common tools. It's not about like technology, it's about talking to each other and taking like, taking care of such an important part of our role as teachers, which is like, having like a proper conversation around assessment. So as I say, it's not really brand new, but it's really good that we can just sort of look back and tap into the experience of some, primary and secondary schools all across the world that are doing some very, very interesting work on this. There are some examples in the EntreAssess website where you can really see what a school with a mature assessment system looks like, and probably that would be like inspiration for all of you. But it takes time, right? And it's not.
It does. It's not easy. But one thing that's important to remember is many teachers that we spoke to through the EntreAssess journey and wider than that, they're already delivering entrepreneurial education. They might not call it that. Many people are already assessing in different ways. But this is, what the EntreAssess vision is. And I think what Skilloon is looking to support is a coherent, coordinated approach to trying to make these skills, this skills development for learners explicit. So both the teacher realizes they're doing it, the learner reflects on those skills developed and understands their own progress, and also the education system values those skills so that that student, that individual, that young person can move forward in their life sort of feeling that they have this capacity. They can put this into a CV, they can go forward into the community and use these skills for social, for cultural, for financial value creation. So this is it. This is not necessarily, sometimes it's something that you need to make more explicit rather than something that's entirely new. But most of all, the students, the learners need to know that they're gaining these skills so that they can say, they can reflect, they can understand their progress.
And I was just adding to that, I was just remembering Tom Cox's testimonial on our blog. I think it's one of the latest blog entries in the website blog, and it's very interesting to see how EntreAssess has already been used in an initial teacher training program, so that it's sort of like, again, kickstarts conversation. These are like student teachers, people who are trained to become primary school teachers, and here's Tom Cox, who's a teacher trainer in Wales, and he's already using the progression model and some of the stuff there to engage these soon to become teachers in that sort of like deeper reflection around the whole topic of assessment of transversal skills, or entrepreneurial transversal non-cognitive skills. But again, it's this like sort of like cross-curricular element that has to be present in every single conversation.
Yeah, I've just added the link to that blog entry into the chat box because it's great. It really is. So, Rafael Balparra from the Basque Country has just added, we're now in a deep process to eliminate exams in high-performance vet levels. That's very interesting. I know that I was speaking to a teacher here in Brussels this week who mentioned that, they've been trying to take away the emphasis on grades and put the emphasis on progress within that learning through tools like learning circles, learning conversations, and really emphasizing the need to go from one point to the next point rather than to reach a certain point by the end of the course. And something that's very interesting at the moment is the increasing, some really interesting stuff happening in around physical literacy. So in PE, physical education, and looking at how to develop these skills and emphasize these skills through and assess these skills through physical education, with that focus on, the whole person, a holistic person, rather than linked to perhaps sort of health and well-being, rather than only the ability to run. It's also the ability to collaborate, teamwork, which can be so important in a sporting environment. Okay, so if there's any, I can see a couple of people saying I can't send my email. That's absolutely fine. Probably we should be quite conscious of putting our emails online, but if you can't send your email, you'll get contact details for both. Jaana is on screen here now, so you can contact Jaana and Mirva on screen now. And I know if you go to the EntreAssess website, there'll be contact details there, but also there's Twitter, which can be an easy way to do it. Okay, so we're coming up to the close of our webinar. If there's anything, I don't know if Jaana, you want to reflect on anything just before we leave, Jaana and Mirva, to say a final word.
Yeah, thank you all for this. Sorry. Yeah, hi. It would be great to hear your feedbacks about our system. So I really encourage you to register in, and there is also in Skilloon you can actually find the feedback system. So you can use it by yourself and with your students. You can play with for a while and experience and ask questions. Whatever you feel, you can return to us. We can also make a school sort of a register school for your use in Skilloon, and you can try it with your students. So then you are wiser. It's hard to explain the whole system, but in such a short time. But I think, Elin, you pictured Skilloon very nicely. That, like you presented, that what it's all about.
What it can really offer. Great. Well, thank you so much to Jaana and Mirva from Skilloon, from the University of Turku in Finland. And thank you so much to Kath and to Iván from Kathryn, University of Wales, Trinity St. David, and Iván from Valnalón. Thank you so much for your contributions. This has been part of the School Education Gateway Initiative. I encourage you to go to our website. If you have a project on entrepreneurship education, on assessment perhaps, then you can actually add it onto our Padlet there, and so that we can try and share information about your project, because I think part of the challenge of doing European projects is sometimes being able to share the results in a meaningful way, and this forum is hopefully one way to do that. The recording and the presentations you can see will be online, and we'll share them with the database that we have of individuals. Please take the feedback survey. We are keen to hear your views, to understand how we can improve what we do. And also, I'd like to highlight the upcoming webinars that we have. Firstly, get inspired by creativity. Absolutely. We've just seen the new Erasmus program, the new funding program from DG Education and Culture. The proposal has been published yesterday. Creativity and innovation is coming through very strongly. So listen in on Thursday the 14th for Get Inspired by Creativity. And on Thursday the 21st of June, 12:30 again, we have Developing the Entrepreneurial Citizen. And this is around understanding the potential links between the EntreComp framework, entrepreneurial skills and mindset, and how people can develop that within the context of citizenship projects that support the development of democratic culture and the competences that go along with that. So we're hoping to have well, we have got some great speakers for that, from the Nemesis project, which is a Horizon 2020 project addressing social innovation and entrepreneurial skills, and also from the Pascal Mampoint-Goyard, who is one of the authors of the Council of Europe Competence Framework on Democratic Culture. So we're very excited about that. So please sign up for those. You'll also be on our database, so I'm sure we can share the webinar recordings of these. But as I say, what we're interested in is being able to support your work, hopefully being able to share your work more effectively. What we'd like to do in webinars going forward is to have a short session at the end called Pitch My Project. So to try and sort of highlight some of the projects that you would put onto our Padlet, onto the School Education Gateway, so that we can tell others about them, so we can learn from them, so we can just get them publicized, because it's so important that policy learns from practice, that practice learns from practice, that research learns from practice. Practice is core. If something isn't tried and piloted and tested, then it's difficult to see how we can progress in the development and advancement of this entrepreneurial development that we're trying to achieve towards young people having the entrepreneurial skills and mindset that they need, that they can use in life, in work, and in their journey through this world that we live in, and all the unexpected challenges that it will definitely bring up towards jobs that, as we all say, we don't know about, they don't even exist yet. So please join us, participate, but thank you most of all for sharing your comments and your thoughts today with us, and thank you again to all our speakers, to European SchoolNet and to European Commission for facilitating and supporting this. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.